At my sister's wedding, my father raised a glass and said, "Lily will inherit everything. Samantha, nothing." Laughter, applause, and me just smiling. You see, while they were busy rehearsing their public fantasy, I was building an empire they didn't even know existed. The truth? I'm not just the black sheep. I'm the shepherd they abandoned. And now, I'm back with the wolves. I didn't come to celebrate. I came to end the illusion. Because behind every golden child is a forgotten one. And tonight, I'm no longer silent. Tonight, the quiet daughter becomes the storm they never saw coming. The chandeliers sparkled like captured stars, their golden glow casting an artificial warmth over the ballroom. Waiters glided like shadows through velvet-draped aisles, champagne flutes in hand, while classical music wove a delicate lie in the air. It was, in every conceivable way, a perfect wedding. And yet, as I sat at the farthest table near the exit sign, I could feel the cold bite of exile beneath all that gold. No one noticed me slip in. No greetings. No eyes turned when I entered, save for one confused cousin who clearly mistook me for a vendor. My name card was misspelled. Samanatha. A cruel little joke, or just carelessness? At this point, the difference no longer mattered. Across the ballroom, Lily stood in a cascade of ivory silk, glowing beneath a canopy of roses. My sister, the crown jewel of this carefully curated family empire. She laughed as she hugged our parents, and I caught the look in my father's eyes. A proud patriarch marveling at his legacy. I had once yearned for that look, desperately, pathetically. Now I wore my indifference like armor, tailored and polished. She glanced in my direction, briefly. A flicker, like I was a stranger she almost recognized. Then, nothing. The illusion was complete. It wasn't always this way. There was a time when Lily clung to my arm in the dark, afraid of thunderstorms. When we built pillow forts and made silent pacts of sisterhood. But then came the expectations, the comparisons, the subtle rewrites of reality. I was too ambitious, too opinionated, too much. Lily, in contrast, was pure sunshine, my mother liked to say. Eventually, I stopped trying to shine at all. I sipped my untouched champagne, eyes drifting over the guests. A few former classmates, aunts who hadn't spoken to me since I left for college, faces I once tried to impress. Now, I was invisible to them by design. The MC tapped his microphone. The music faded. All eyes turned to the grand staircase as my father ascended in his tailored tuxedo, beaming like a king. The room quieted in reverence. I felt my heart slow, then harden. Tonight, he began, is a celebration of not just love, but legacy. I tilted my head. Here it comes. My daughter, Lily, he said, his voice rich with sentiment, is the embodiment of everything this family stands for. Grace, integrity, devotion. A beat of applause. He paused, smiling down at her. And as such, she will inherit everything we've built, every asset, every trust, every deed, because she has earned it. Silence now. Not out of confusion, but complicity. He glanced in my direction, just once. And Samantha, he said with practiced cheer, well, she has her own path. We wish her well on it. I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. I smiled as if I had just won the lottery. Inside, 1,000 shards of my childhood stabbed their way through my lungs. I remembered the letter from Yale, the scholarship I earned, the one that vanished because someone, Lily, switched the forms at the last minute. My parents insisted it was a clerical error. They needed me close to home, they said. Family first, my mother whispered as she handed Lily my acceptance packet and called it destiny. I breathed slowly, letting the pain simmer beneath my ribcage. The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. Lily dabbed a tear. It was all so beautiful, so noble, so fake. What they didn't know, what they would soon learn, is that I wasn't just the forgotten daughter anymore. I adjusted the small pin on my lapel, which wasn't decorative. Hidden inside was a micro camera, streaming everything to a secure cloud. Audio, too. Legal grade. I had learned from the best. Months of planning, of building the archive. They thought they were silencing me. What they'd done instead was hand me the script. My father's speech was almost over. To Lily and James, may your future be bright and your legacy eternal. More applause. Glasses clinked. Guests rose to their feet, swept up in the manufactured sentiment. I stayed seated, watching it all like a documentary I'd already seen. One thing I've learned, when people think you have nothing left, they stop watching you. They underestimate. They forget you're still in the room. And that's when the storm begins. The morning after the wedding, my face wasn't in any of the official photos. Not a single one. It was as if I had never been there. And maybe, in their version of the story, I wasn't. But I was everywhere else. I sat in my car outside a cafe in the city, engine off, phone glowing with notifications, dozens of alerts from finance blogs, tech columns, glossy family magazines. I scrolled through headlines: Golden Bride, Golden Brand, Lily Carter to expand family legacy. Older sister's startup inspires wedding-themed app reboot. Samantha Carter's struggles, a fall from genius to ghost. My jaw clenched. They'd weaponized the press like a scalpel, cutting away my credibility with a smile. Photos of Lily in white, holding hands with investors I introduced her to. Quotes from my father about a new era led by fresh minds and cleaner reputations. Every word sharpened with implication. I was tainted, difficult, disposable. I wasn't surprised. I was prepared. I reached for my laptop in the passenger seat, flipped it open, and entered the secure vault. A single word blinked in red on the top of my encrypted dashboard. Phase 2. Months ago, I'd registered every piece of intellectual property tied to my startup under a separate legal entity, one no one knew about. When they pushed me out, they assumed they'd taken everything. But they'd only stolen the skin. The skeleton, the blood, the code, still mine. Lily, in all her brilliance, had just closed a pre-sale deal with a luxury tech firm. The demo she pitched? A platform based on stolen algorithms. My algorithms. Ones I could prove she had no legal right to. I smiled, not out of pettiness, but precision. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. One click would trigger a legal halt. But not yet. First, let the lie spread wider. Let them build higher. Then watch the collapse shatter louder. My phone buzzed. A message from my father's assistant. Your father would like to discuss the company. Family brunch, 11 a.m. Translation: Come surrender. I arrived early. The restaurant was one of those private rooftop places with mirrored windows and no menu, just influence and eye contact. My father sat at the head of the table like a CEO in exile. Lily beside him, too radiant to be real. My mother smiled tightly across from me, clutching a champagne glass like it was a lifeline. I'll get to the point, my father said without ceremony. The press is watching. The company's in transition. You being unpredictable doesn't help. Unpredictable, I echoed. Is that the new word for betrayed? He waved it off. We want you to formally release all ownership. Sign over your shares, full exit. We'll offer a generous payout. I sipped water. You mean hush money. We mean legacy preservation, Lily chimed in. Her voice was honey dipped in cyanide. This brand is about unity. You're complicated. I looked at my mother. For a flicker of a second, guilt cracked her gaze. Then, as I reached for my bag, she moved. A whisper, a sleight of hand, a folded note pressed into my palm under the table. Her fingers trembled. I waited until I was alone in the elevator to open it. Trust fund still intact, hidden, house attic, use the birth date. I didn't hesitate. 2 hours later, I was standing in the dusty attic of the house I hadn't entered in over a decade. The air smelled of time and forgotten tears. I found the old bookshelf, the false back panel, and the tiny safe behind it, just as I remembered. My childhood birthday still worked. It clicked open with a sound that made my knees shake. Inside was a hard drive and a sealed envelope marked, "For Sam, only when the lies become louder than love." I pressed play. My mother's voice filled the room, older, sadder. If you're watching this, they've gone too far. and I'm sorry. I stayed silent when I should have screamed. I watched them dim you to make her shine, but you were always my light. Everything I couldn't say, I put in this trust. It's yours, Sam. Not because of blood, but because you earned it. Tears threatened, but I blinked them back. Then something unexpected happened. A soft click behind me. The safe had a second compartment. The panel slid open slowly, revealing a smaller box, sleek, matte black. Inside, a USB drive, a legal stamp, and a single line etched on a card. This is Phase 3, when you're ready. The news broke on a Wednesday. The kind of Wednesday that tastes like ash before the coffee even cools. Samantha Carter accused of fraudulent contracts, the headline read. Sources inside say documents were doctored, signature deepfaked. Every outlet picked it up within the hour. Photos of me flashed across social feeds, always the same, confident, cold, calculated, the villain they'd been waiting for. I wasn't just erased now, I was publicly condemned. I stared at the screen in my kitchen, a cup of untouched coffee in hand while the flames spread. Investors pulled out, clients vanished. PR firms dropped their retainers like I was radioactive. My phone vibrated endlessly, but I didn't answer. Not friends, not former partners, not even my assistant who texted, "Should I resign?" I didn't blame them. They believed what they saw. After all, the documents had my signature, my tone, my phrasing. And yet I had never seen them before. Then came the email. No sender, no reply to, just a subject line. They did it to me too. Inside, one line. If you don't take back your name now, Lily will own every piece of you. Someone who lost everything before you. Attached was a folder. Internal documents, drafts of fake contracts, code from a project I thought had been shelved, deep fake AI, something I created years ago and buried because it was too dangerous. But they had resurrected it, improved it, used me. I felt something unravel. Not fear, not even rage, just clarity, the kind that hurts in a clean, exact way. As I scrolled, another message arrived. Subject: The wedding is the stage, perform. There was no signature, just a gif of a mask cracking in slow motion. I closed the laptop, fingers numb. My body moved like it was on script. I packed a duffel, turned off my phone, and drove straight to the one place they'd never think I'd return. The third-floor apartment I lived in during my first startup launch. The paint still peeled in the same corners. The air still smelled like unwashed ambition. I collapsed onto the floor. No furniture, no plans, just silence. Over the next 2 days, I watched the world move on without me. My name became synonymous with scandal, Reddit threads, Twitter memes, TikTok breakdowns by people who'd never met me. My inbox filled with messages like, "Maybe don't screw your own sister next time. You had it all and got greedy. Typical." Deserved. Even people I once considered friends said nothing, or worse, retweeted the stories. I faded from view exactly as they intended. And then, late into a sleepless night, my phone, silent until now, lit up with a soft, unfamiliar chime. A notification from an old app I had built, years ago. One that synced to messages from scheduled servers only if a key protocol was triggered. The screen read, "You have one unread message from Mom." I sat up, pulse crashing. The audio began automatically. Her voice, calmer than I remembered, less strained. It had been scheduled clearly, a message from the past. "If you're hearing this, I know what they've done, and I'm sorry. I wasn't brave enough to stop them, but I made sure you wouldn't be alone in the dark. They will always try to twist your light into shadow. But Sam, your light is real, and one day you'll blind them with it." Static, then silence. It was the last thing she ever said to me. I sat there for a long time, the voice echoing in my chest until everything inside me began to burn. I stood, walked to the bathroom, turned on the light, looked at the stranger in the mirror, the one they painted as cruel, cold, corrupt. And then I spoke aloud, softly. "Enough." I took the lipstick from the counter, drew a single line across my mouth like a blood vow. Then I whispered the only promise I would keep from now on. Fine, Mom. You'll see me burn it all. The first post was anonymous, a black screen with a modulated voice. No names, no faces, just a story. A woman disinherited by her father, betrayed by her sister, gaslighted by a family who branded her difficult, disobedient, disposable. She spoke clearly, calmly, but behind every word was fire, the kind that only grows in silence, the kind they never see coming. In 24 hours, the video had over 6 million views. Comments poured in. I thought I was the only one. This sounds like my life. Whoever she is, I believe her. A movement had begun, almost by accident. But I knew it was no accident. By the third day, I had a name for it. Anonymous Daughters. A private network of women who had been erased by the very people meant to protect them. Some had lost inheritances, others reputations, most their voices. And in the echoes of my own destruction, we found each other. I never showed my face, but the truth has its own signature. And something about the way I told it, the exactness of betrayal, the deep-etched scars, made it undeniable. And then came the message from the one person I didn't expect. A courier envelope, no return address. Inside, a flash drive, labeled in my mother's handwriting. For Sam. Only when you're ready to see him clearly. I plugged it into my laptop with trembling hands. The screen blinked, then flickered to life. It was a video diary. My mother, younger, speaking into a camera. Her voice was quieter here, more uncertain. You always thought your father was a monster, she began. But the truth is, he was just a coward. He chose Lily not because she was better, but because she was easier to control. She paused, swallowing. I invested in your company. I did it through a proxy, because I knew if he found out, he'd shut it down. He hated your independence, feared it. But I was proud of you, Sam. You built something real. You were never the mistake. I couldn't breathe. The woman I thought had stood by and done nothing had been fighting for me the entire time. In secret, silently, like me. The final frame was her holding up a small velvet box, the necklace she gave me when I turned 25. I reached for it immediately, unclasping it from my neck. Hands shaking, I found the tiny latch at the base of the pendant. It clicked. Inside, a miniature key, silver, engraved with numbers, a safety deposit box. 2 hours later, I sat in a cold marble lobby as a vault attendant unlocked a long metal drawer. Inside, meticulously preserved, were original signed copies of the trust documents my mother had drafted before her death. Witnessed, notarized, legally binding. They placed ownership of nearly every family asset under a trust and made me the sole executor. My fingers trembled as I held the papers. I wasn't powerless. They had just been betting I'd never look. The fire inside me crystallized into resolve. I spent the next 5 days in silence, planning, building. I hired a private legal team, people who knew discretion, speed, and strategy. I contacted journalists, offering them exclusive access to a legacy story that would shake the industry. I curated files, timelines, footage. I documented every step of my family's betrayal, every falsified contract, every backdated agreement. And then I bought a dress. Black, sleek, unapologetic. I ordered special invitation boxes, gold-trimmed, elegant, sealed with wax. Inside each, an engraved card that read, "You are cordially invited to a private celebration of legacy." Dress code, truth. Location, Carter Estate. Time, 8 p.m. They were sent to every major investor, every media executive, every person who ever doubted me. Even Lily got one. The replies poured in. Yes, yes, yes. The last email I received came from my father. Subject, regret. You should remember, the ungrateful do not deserve forgiveness. I read it 3 times. Then once more, just to be sure. Then I replied, I don't need forgiveness anymore. At 7:59 p.m., I stood behind the scenes of the newly decorated Carter Estate Ballroom, where Lily's post-wedding celebration was about to begin. Strings of white roses curled down from golden chandeliers. Journalists milled beside champagne towers. Music played softly over the speakers. I opened my laptop, entered the secure server. A single file waited. Final Act XE. At exactly 8 p.m., I clicked it. Lily's heels clicked against the marble floor as she approached the cake, smiling at the cameras like a woman who had never tasted consequence. Her dress shimmered under the chandeliers, every detail curated, every angle choreographed. Guests cheered, phones raised, the illusion nearly complete, until the screen behind her flickered. The first image appeared silently, a scanned signature, then another. A folder labeled Trust Documents Original. Then, my voice. Good evening. My name is Samantha Carter. I'm the daughter you were never meant to remember. Lily froze. The music stopped. Conversations died mid-sentence. Guests turned in confusion, their champagne trembling. The screen expanded. It showed my mother, in her own handwriting and voice, stating that all primary family assets, real estate, shares, intellectual property, had been secured under a trust fund, and that trust fund was never meant for Lily. It was mine. This trust, my mother's voice said, is to be executed by Samantha Carter, and by no one else. The footage changed, contracts, email trails, deepfake source code, internal communications between Lily and my father, strategizing the smear campaign against me. Every word, every betrayal, public, live, a global live stream, over 2 million viewers and climbing. I stepped onto the stage, dressed in black, calm as thunder before it breaks. Lily turned slowly. Her face was pale, mascara clinging to disbelief. She tried to speak. I raised a hand. Don't, I said. Let's not embarrass you more than you've already managed. Gasps. A cameraman zoomed in. I could almost hear the headlines writing themselves. My father stood halfway across the room, frozen, his jaw clenched. His face was the same mask he'd worn all my life, authority without accountability. I know what you did, I said, turning to him. I know about the meetings, the rewrites, the legal pressure. I know how you tried to silence me. He opened his mouth, but I was faster. I walked to him and handed him a small velvet box. He stared at it, reluctant, then opened it. Inside was the company's official seal, the last symbol of control he had over the empire he helped build. Beneath it, a card. I don't need it anymore. He didn't speak. His hands trembled. I built my own empire, I said, but today isn't about me. It's about the truth, and finally letting it speak louder than legacy. Security escorted Lily off stage as murmurs became roars. Some guests filmed, others cried, but most just watched, paralyzed, as the curtain fell on the golden illusion. The fallout came fast. Within 48 hours, my father was placed under federal investigation for financial manipulation and tax fraud. Whistleblowers from his company surfaced, encouraged by the public outrage and legal protection. His empire crumbled from within. Lily lost every brand deal she'd secured. Sponsorships withdrew. Her business partners sued for misrepresentation. Her social media accounts were flooded, not with sympathy but with screenshots of her lies. The Carter name, once synonymous with prestige, became a cautionary tale. Extended family, those who once ignored me at weddings and family reunions, began reaching out. Apologies, confessions, stories of things they'd seen but never questioned, stories that mirrored mine, some even worse. Truth has gravity. It pulls the hidden to the surface, and for the first time in 20 years, I didn't have to beg to be heard. I didn't speak to my father again. I didn't need to. He now lived in the silence he'd once gifted me. I spent the next week alone in a quiet cabin upstate. No press, no phones, just air that didn't ask anything of me. I breathed again, slept, ate slowly. I remembered who I was before they taught me to shrink. Then, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I picked up, more curious than cautious. "Ms. Carter," a voice said, smooth, professional. "This is Andrea from Netflix Original Content. We've been following your story very closely. If you're open to it, we'd like to discuss adaptation rights." I laughed. It was the first time in years I had truly laughed. The platform launched quietly at first. Just a simple landing page, a logo, 2 hands, one reaching up, the other reaching back. The name underneath, Unclaimed Daughters. Within weeks, it wasn't quiet anymore. Emails poured in from around the world. Stories from women who had been written out of wills, gaslighted out of companies, shamed into silence. Lawyers volunteered, accountants, therapists, survivors. A movement grew, rooted in truth, legally armed and emotionally unstoppable. We offered guidance, legal frameworks, emotional safety nets, and, more than anything, we offered language for grief that had never been named, for inheritance that was more than money. My face was never on the homepage, but it was everywhere else. A viral interview clip made its rounds. "Power is not something I fought to reclaim," I said, eyes steady. It was something I remembered had always been mine. Those words got stitched onto tote bags, quoted in classrooms, whispered in courtrooms, carved into bracelets women wore to divorce hearings and probate battles. 90% of the platform's profit was quietly redirected to build transitional housing, a network of homes for women escaping familial abandonment, each one named after someone who had once been forgotten. My mother's name was on the first door. It was during a site visit in New Mexico that I received the letter. A real letter, handwritten, no return address. The paper was thick, the ink slightly smudged. It read, "I watched your story unfold from the other side of the glass. Your strength gave me mine. I thought I was alone until you gave me a name for what I had lived. I have a daughter. She's 15. She doesn't know yet that her grandfather rejected her before she was even born. But someday I'll tell her. And I'll start the story like this. There was once a woman named Sam." I flipped the page over. "P.S. My mother's name was Lily. I think we might be related." I sat with that for a long time. The weight of inherited harm, the irony of cycles, the quiet defiance of rewriting them. That night, I walked to the river behind the foundation's first house. It was quiet, save for the wind stirring the trees. The TED Talk was 3 days away. I should have been rehearsing. Instead, I sat barefoot on the grass, the old necklace in my hand, the one my mother gave me, the one that once held secrets, the one that once carried survival. I held it up to the sky, let the moonlight catch it. Then I kissed the cold metal and let it drop into the water. It sank without a sound. 3 days later, I stood on a stage that was nothing like the wedding hall. There were no chandeliers, no forced smiles, just a crowd of strangers waiting to hear a story they already felt in their bones. I took a breath. "When I was younger," I began, "I thought survival meant silence. I believed that if I stayed small enough, quiet enough, obedient enough, I might be allowed to stay." The room didn't move. But silence is not safety, and obedience is not love. I told them everything, not just the betrayal, but the transformation, the moments in the dark, the voice message from my mother, the lipstick on the mirror, the ignition of my fire. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. The story wasn't about them anymore. It was about what happens after the burn. At the end, I said this: the greatest revenge is not justice, it's freedom, to live fully, loudly, without shame, while they remain stuck in the prisons they built out of fear. The crowd rose before I even stepped away from the mic. Later that night, I stood alone on the hotel balcony. City lights stretched like galaxies. My phone buzzed nonstop, but I ignored it. I wasn't waiting for approval anymore. Not theirs, not anyone's. I had nothing left to prove, only something to become. So I whispered the words I once couldn't say, not even to myself. "Goodbye, ghost. Hello, me." And for the first time in my life, I believed them,